when you're ready, you can bring your awareness forward. No hurries, no worries. It's nice to transition smoothly. Back in Carbondale. So welcome. It's nice to have such a full house tonight. The teaching is a good time too, because we're just about to embark upon the stages of the path to enlightenment. We've technically started already, but it's pretty exciting to be able to really cover such a full, embodied text, really, that describes literally everything from how to set up an altar to how to achieve enlightenment, and how it's organized, and the essence of practice of Dharma. And so we spent already our 3 sessions, I think. So as we more formally teach, typically it's brought up in a very specific manner. Number 1 is reflecting upon the authors of these texts and their qualities. And so we took some time with the authors. We took some time with the teachings themselves, how beneficial they are and why we practice them. And then last week we talked a bit about the qualities of a teacher and a student. So if you were to receive teachings like this, if you go to a Tibetan Lama, they're going to spend a great deal of time really unpacking, who's the author, and what's the lineage of this teaching, and then why would we study these teachings? What are they beneficial? And the reason for this, it makes a lot of sense. Number 1 is, if I think they're important, I might pay attention. And, why do we do anything? And how much of our life do we not take time to think about why we're doing what we're doing? How much of our life's on autopilot in any way? Hey, let's go do this. Hey, how about that? I know what some of you are thinking. He mentioned fat Thai earlier, didn't he? So, we get programmed, things pop up, and we do things. And so something like Dharma, where it actually has the power to completely liberate us from all conditioned existence and help remove the suffering of all beings. That's pretty, I don't even have words to describe how important that could be. And so it's worthwhile to take time that, I know that these authors are good authors, that they have a lineage, that they know what they're talking about. I know the origins of the teaching. And then I really also want to know that these teachings themselves are beneficial. So we take some time when we think about that. And then last week we really covered the qualities of a teacher, qualities of a student. And we want to make sure that, if we have a chance to receive teachings, sometimes you don't have a lot of choice, limited varieties. We're out here in western Colorado, so it's not the same as if you were in Southern California. Where I lived in Long Beach, within a few blocks of my house was a Thai Buddhist center, a Tibetan Buddhist center, the Chinese temple. It's, what flavor are you interested in? And so out here we have less options, so you're stuck with me in one level, and probably some other more qualified people around here somewhere. But so to some degree we have, where we have choice, but any choice, you want to think about, are they qualified? And it takes some time to, I always like to say, check under the hood and kick the tires. Pay attention when you look at teachers. Do they say one thing and do another? What's their demeanor? We went through a list of 10 qualities that are ideal. And it's really challenging to find anyone with all 10. Really challenging. So you want to find one with as many as you can. I was recently talking with someone, and they're kind of on a path to get certified at something, certified to teach something. And the topic was do you want to be certified or do you want to be qualified? You know? Yeah. You want to be certified or qualified? I mean, we can get pieces of paper. We can receive teachings. But if you want to be qualified to help people live a healthy, balanced life, what would the qualification of that be? I would think maybe that you'd know how to live a healthy, whole, balanced life. You know. So when we think about qualities of a teacher, yeah, it's one thing if they're well read. It's a whole nother, you know, if their behavior matches what they're talking about, and are they capable of, you know, having a mind that works, is serviceable, and their behavior is appropriate, and you don't see them getting all caught up and screaming at people or doing things that just don't seem like that's not what you said the other night. So we want to pay attention to that. We want to pay attention to that. And then the qualities of a student, you know, really coming here with an opportunity to receive something that has the potential to transform your life irreversibly. I mean, that's pretty powerful. And we don't get a lot of that, right? We don't spend most of our day thinking about Dharma talks. We don't spend most of our day having an opportunity to spend an hour or two receiving an opportunity to transform our life, to remove all suffering. You know, it's precious. And so we really want to make sure that when we do take advantage of this opportunity, you know, we want to be as present as possible. The qualities of student, we talked about having a discriminating intelligence to really, you know, evaluate things. You know, to have an open mind, but an evaluative one. These teachings are not to be taught and said, this is the way it is, and that's how it is. That's not how this works. It's, well, this is what has been practiced and taught by the Buddha for, you know, over 2,500 years. A lot of people have done this. It's replicated, and here's their experience, and there's different methods. And so you test. You try it out. Is this working in your life? Does that make sense? Take some time to contemplate it. But in order to do that, I have to really cultivate my qualities as a student. To be here, to be present. To not be in a leaky pot, or a dirty pot, or an upside down pot. You know, we covered those last week. And to be here in a way that is, that I want to use this, that I am really going to do my best to, the analogy they use is take the medicine. So if the Buddha is the doctor and the Dharma is the prescription of the medicine, I'm going to put it into practice. I'm going to try it out and really embrace it. So we really now have gone through those 3 sections, and we're at this 4th, which is how to lead someone through the path. And so this is where we begin a practice. The practice that is most commonly associated with Buddhism, you may have heard of, may not be too surprising, is meditation. And meditation is really necessary to be able to transform our lives, because we have a mind that is dragging us around. We have a mind that's in control of our life, and it's not us controlling the mind. You know? That mind is just always got something to say. It's got something to have us worry about. It's got something to entice me into. It's got just this filter of obsessive thinking and delusional labels, and it's just dragging us around. And most of the time, I'm not even aware of it. And if I want some control in my life, I have to make my mind serviceable. I have to be able to put my mind where I'd like it to be, rather than have it drag me around every day. And so this is critical. And if we want to gain understanding of truth, we have to look at truth. So we need a mind to be able to do that. We need a mind to be able to start paying attention, to see things as they are. Because ultimately, this is the path to see things as they are. That's really the whole thing, is to see things as they are. If you start living in accordance to reality as it actually is, you're not going to suffer. Which is a pretty fascinating little key point here. That's the whole path. Is our main problem is misperception. And the answer is to see things clearly. So I can't see clearly if my mind's always, going around. I can't even sit still for a minute, and I can't have my mind pay attention to something. It wants to do its own thing. And it'll fight you, right? It'll fight you. And even when you get more proficient, it gets creative. It gets really creative. So when we go to meditate, you'll notice, even if you start doing pretty good at it, then all of a sudden the mind will say, well, how's your knee doing right now? How's that feel? Yeah, not going to pay attention to me, huh? How about that? Now, how about that little itch on your nose? How you feeling there? It's just used to running the show, and when we stop paying attention to it, it gets creative. And so to be able to really just settle the mind, to relax, and to start being able to direct it where we want is going to be critical. This Lamrim approach is within the Gaelic tradition. So that's my training as a Gaelic Tibetan tradition, is a path of being able to meditate on something to get some realization, and then you go to the next step, and you meditate on it, and you get a realization, and you get the next step. And so it's this path. It's stages of the path to enlightenment. You do this first, you do this next. It's organized. It's really wonderful in the sense of we won't be lost on a path, and we know what it's there for, and we know what's next, and we know where we're going. So everything that we do, there's going to be a clear direction for, literally to how to set up an altar and why, which is fascinating. Now, the other piece to this is coming from a Tibetan culture, and we are, okay, I don't see any Tibetans, okay. We're in a modern Western culture, so there's a big cultural overlay that we need to take into account. So as we present things, I want to make things very practical for us, because we're not going to come from this other type of background. And so some of the things that have been embraced, that are taught, we want to see how that's more practical for us and the essence of it. And so I'll try to make it real usable in that sense, and try to explain why we do it. So as we begin now, the next step here is how to prepare to meditate. And there's 6 preparatory practices. Those of you that did the Chenrei Sig day long, we went through those. And so when we think about preparing to meditate, a preparation of meditation, we really want to think about creating a conducive environment for that. You look out, I was thinking of Sopris out here, a real beautiful mountain, I was coming back and took the shuttle, Colorado Mountain Express. Charles, nice guy, good driver. I think you know him. So we're having this talk, and he says, we're just talking about living here, and I talked about, Sopris. He goes, I hear that's a sacred mountain, somebody told me that. Sacred mountain. And so it bears the thought, what makes that a sacred mountain? And more importantly than that, isn't what makes that a sacred mountain, is how can you make your meditation session a sacred place? How can you do that? If I put a bunch of rosary beads and a picture of the Buddha, set up some stuff, now do I have a sacred place? What makes something sacred? And so when we receive these trainings for preparing for a good meditation, they're really talking about creating a really conducive environment for you to progress. And they'll talk about decorating and a Buddha and so forth. But what makes something sacred, Lama Yeshe, says, this is not spiritual. all that stuff I have, the incense, that's not spiritual. What's spiritual is my mind. That's what needs to be trained. That's the whole journey. Everything I'm experiencing is through my mind. And so we can have a really nice room. It can look really cool. We can have all the spiritual bling. You know. But that's not necessarily going to make it a spiritual place. What you do there and why you do it there, coming back to motivation and intention, that's what's going to create an environment. If we bring to our mind the thoughts that we find important again and again, they're going to be saturating the mind. The mind is going to absorb what it's around. It's going to absorb what's around. So there's an old saying in my old neighborhood was, if you hang around a barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut. You know? And the mind is very much like this. If I hang out with the guys, I used to hang out with, I'd still be doing the things I used to do. And if I spend my time in places and, if people are, whether it's, whatever their thing is, your mind really gets acclimated and habituated to that environment, those people, and the things we do, and that's where we find our joy, our little temporary pleasures. And we go back to that. One of the, in my own mind, I can see these still very, very subtle, filtered imprints. And even though years later, they're still there, they're really weak now, but they're there, and it's fascinating how they'll pop up. So the mind absorbs what it's around, what I'm paying attention to. So when we're going to practice Dharma, we have to remember that most of your day, I'm going to guess, you're not really thinking about how to achieve enlightenment in this very moment. Most of your day, you're going to be focused on a lot of what we call mundane things, right? 8 worldly concerns and getting the paycheck and doing things and meeting so-and-so and all that. And then every now and then we're going to take a little time out, maybe go to a Dharma talk, or I might do a meditation session, I might do that. But if you add it up in hours over your day, how much of it's going to be spent here? And so we have an avalanche of habit and conditioning that it's just this, like a glacial slide coming down. And I got my little spoon of Dharma, and I'm like, okay, man, I'm going to put 20 minutes into this, all right? And, so maybe I can grab a shovel, at least. If I'm going to do 20 minutes, get maybe a snowblower even, right? And so that's when as I'm going to present these 6 preparatory practices, it's how to turn that little spoon into a shovel. I mean, it's still a big job, but at least we're making really good use of our time. Because most of our time we're not doing this, just to be honest, okay? If you can create a situation where you can do this more and more and more, that's great. But and those of you that took the Lojong teachings, what we do out of practice becomes our practice. So we can actually make work our practice. We can make how we interact with our relatives and friends and neighbors our practice, and that can be a fuller thing. But it doesn't start just because I heard a good talk one day, because that's in and out of this mind, before you get to Fat Thai. It's that quick. Maybe I'll switch to a different restaurant. There's no promotional affiliation. By the way. No promotional affiliation. Yeah. Maybe I could work the goat in there or something, and I can get some little sponsorship of. Yeah. So, with this, these great masters know this about our mind, and so they really want us, before we sit down and meditate, is to really create an environment for that and to make it as meaningful as possible. So they really encourage you. Now, everything here is with our best of ability, okay? So ideally, if you're setting up a place to do some spiritual practice, to read or to meditate, it'd be nice to have it not be in a place that you work, not in the office, not at a desk. It's best even out of the bedroom. Have just a dedicated space. Now, I used to live in a studio apartment, not going to be that productive, so there's a little corner I carved out, and that's where I did it. So as much as possible to create that environment. But when we start to prepare to have a daily practice, if we can, to the best of our ability, there's 6 preparatory practices specific to, especially within these Lamrim, how we can get the most beneficial aspects to our efforts. So number 1 is, before you meditate, is to really clean your environment there. It's like you're going to invite your best guests. You're inviting all the enlightened beings here. So these are very precious guests. So wherever you meditate, wherever you sit to do your practice, you want to take a little time, dust it down, make sure it's nice and clean, fresh. And just a really nice, clean environment, and set up an altar. So with an altar, in our tradition, we're going to have 3 items, and ideally, again, it can go down to 1. The thing about Tibetan Buddhists is great that it expands and contracts. So if you have room, you can go to all these pieces, or if you don't, you can have one thing that symbolizes all. But we really want something that symbolizes the body, speech, and mind of enlightenment. So usually there's a statue of the Buddha right at the center, and on the right, some sign of the enlightenment. So that's the body, and then the enlightened mind. And so the little stupas, or a dorje and bell, and they kind of symbolize that. And then on the other side, a text, a Dharma text, neatly wrapped. So that's body, speech, and mind, the enlightened mind. So the speech would be the text, the Dharma. And so if I took a little time and I got this area nice, and now I've set up this Buddha, the Dharma text, and a little stupa, and it's there, and it's nice, little kata. The second step is to make offerings. And when we think about offerings, they also, in here, are talking about offerings that are obtained appropriately. And I could go into great depth on that. As a monk, you have to really make sure that your offerings are obtained. Like, you're not allowed to obtain offerings by flattery. You're not allowed to give a small gift in the hope of getting a bigger gift. There's all this stuff. There's lots of angles. And so they want to know that, whatever offerings you're making, are really coming from your heart. You got them ethically. They're nice, and so they also have these little water bowls and water offerings. Really precious. Maybe we'll do a train on that. We did that in our other course. But whether you're offering a little water, whether you're offering an apple, whether you're offering some incense, the Buddhas don't need it. Right? They don't need it. What we're really doing is we're cultivating an attitude that I'm inviting my precious guests, enlightened beings here in this space with me, and they are there all the time. And I am cultivating a generous mind, and I'm welcoming attitude in a space that I'm going to invite all these enlightened beings to be here to meditate with me, to help me. And so I'm making offerings, we have little rituals around water, and its precious qualities. So a little water, a little incense. Sometimes it's nice to take a little incense around the room. Some people sage a place, But what you're doing is really having an attitude. I'm inviting these enlightened beings. So 1 is to clean the space, create the altar. 2 is, making these offerings. And then I settle down in this beautiful space where I've invited these precious guests, and I get in my position, an appropriate position to meditate, and I cultivate refuge in what we call bodhicitta. So I know some of you do not have pad. I know some people are noting. There's text on this, and what I will do is a little outline that I'll make available. I got in, like 2:30 in the morning from my 3 weeks away, so I didn't get a lot of time to do that. So some of these key points, but yeah. The symbolic piece we'll talk about too, and why we do it, so that'll help. But if I have this nice space and I have an image of the Buddha, if I don't have all three, just the image of the Buddha, I know that encompasses all these qualities. And I make a little offering and make this nice place. Then I sit down, and so technically the text would give you an 8-point posture. 7-point depends on whether or not you count breath. But what we would say is have a good posture to meditate. And, the Buddha basically taught you could meditate sitting, standing, walking, or laying down. So you're pretty much sitting, standing, walking, laying all the time, right? But this time we really want a posture that's conducive for, I'm here to meditate, so I'm going to take a little time. And if I sit in a chair, let's say I sit in a regular chair, the idea is to have a straight back, and have the tongue touching the roof of the mouth, a relaxed jaw, and that's pretty good. We could go through all 7 points, but a straight back is healthy in a lot of ways for meditation. But one real wonderful thing is it allows the belly to just rise and fall naturally. And then the tongue touching the roof of the mouth allows the chi to flow, but also allows you to not have to swallow too much. So nice piece there. So I'm here. I've got my altar. Everything's ready. My place. I'm sitting, and whether I'm in a chair, I'm cross-legged, whatever my thing is, I'm comfortable. Now I need to bring my mind into what we call refuge and bodhicitta. Refuge and bodhicitta. So refuge is, where am I really going to take refuge in this life that I have? What can I depend on? Refuge is, where am I going to go when everything is just hitting the fan? When you think of refuge, it's what can you ultimately depend on? And so if you decide you're a Buddhist, one of the basic things to being a Buddhist, somebody said, what makes you a Buddhist? I get fascinated about what makes you a Buddhist. One thing is to have taken refuge. Refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. What we call the 3 jewels of refuge. Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And by refuge, it's really a reliance upon, really having a reliance upon that this is a place I can depend. Now, can you take refuge before you can feel dependable on that? It's challenging, right? You got to check it out. To really have a solid base of refuge, you have to test this stuff out, and you have to see if it's reliable. But first, you have to learn about it. And then you test it. So we take refuge, and I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. And in taking refuge, I'm really reiterating my reliance that this is a place I can depend. So the Buddha, that there's not just one Buddha too, there's many enlightened beings. We have the historical one that gave these teachings, but we'd say since beginningless time, we've all had multiple lives, and there's many enlightened beings. But taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha is saying that these are all, if I want it to be reliable, it has to be beyond any conditioned existence. It has to be beyond samsara. So we don't take refuge in anything that is in conditioned existence. So for those of you here for the talk on the wheel of life, we really learned about 6 realms of conditioned existence. I think we're all in the human realm that I can see. Can't verify it, but I'm speculating there. So we have human realm, we have animal realm, we have hungry ghosts, and we have hell realms. And then they also have above the human realm, 2 heaven realms. So these pleasure realms that are higher. And a lot of people don't realize, we have heaven and hell in Buddhism too. They just don't last. So if you're in hell, that's kind of cool. You'll get out at some point. But if you're in heaven, that's going to end too. So it's cyclic existence. So the idea is that based on my karma, based on how I've lived my lives, when this physical body ends, it's not like I go anywhere or anything. It's that my consciousness, which has been there since before this body, and my consciousness will be here after this body, my consciousness will start perceiving things differently. And I may look down and start seeing some paws and wanting to chase a car. So my consciousness will start seeing things differently. And so you might be in this pleasurable realm and things are really wonderful. And instead of drinking what appears to be water here, I would be drinking radiant nectar and experiencing it like that. And that's actually a really good analogy. They use water a lot. They say, same phenomena, water. We're human, so we experience it as water. They say if you were like heaven realm, you could experience this as radiant nectar. And if you're in the hungry ghost realm, this could be vile pus. But the actual phenomenon isn't any different. It's not any different. So it's kind of interesting, huh? And so going back to just perspective, it says that, and we'll unpack more as we go, that we have this rare opportunity right now. We have in this lifetime an opportunity to have Dharma and to have practice that can transform our whole continuum of experience and actually no longer even be in a conditioned existence, be beyond heaven, be beyond karma. And that's what the Buddha did. He woke up. And so we have these teachings for that, to wake up, to see things as they are. And then I'm no longer subject to all these rebirths and so forth. And so these beings that are awake are who we take refuge in. We take refuge in the Dharma jewel, the jewel of Dharma, which isn't just, a book. Dharma is the ultimate nature of reality. It's the truth. It's also our realizations on the path. And so when we think about really taking refuge, we want to take refuge in a path that leads to no more suffering, something that is beyond conditioned existence. And then the Sangha. So a lot of times we'll say, this is our Sangha, right? Way of Compassion, Dharma Center. This is our Sangha. But we're not really taking refuge in that sense. In this Sangha sense, it is all the other enlightened beings. So they're beyond conditioned existence. Monastics are often called a Sangha, all the monks and nuns, because they represent those enlightened beings. And then, we have what we call a Sangha. So it's good that we can depend on each other to a fault, but I don't know that you're going to be faultless, and I don't know that you're going to always tell me the right thing to do, and I don't know that, you're going to be human, right? We're flawed, and we can't see clearly, and we're going to make mistakes. So enlightened beings see clearly. So that's what we depend. So when we take refuge, we really want to take refuge in these 3 jewels of refuge beyond conditioned existence. So it says, take refuge and cultivate bodhicitta. So this is the 3rd preparatory practice. So to take some time to cultivate, when I take in refuge, I just remember there is something I can depend on. There is a path. There are beings that are always there for me. I can rely on that. Now you're not going to be able to rely on that just because I told you that. You got to check it out after a while. Test it out. Sometimes, but we see how that goes. So typically I've got my altar, I'm set, my offerings are made, and I go for refuge. The Buddha is the Dharma, the Sangha. And then there's a next verse. Through the positive potential I create by practicing generosity and the other virtues, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So cultivating bodhicitta, the great compassion, really saying that motivation. And we did a little motivation in our meditation where we're setting a motivation that we're really doing this for all living beings, that all beings could be free of suffering. That's bodhicitta. That when we've cultivated it, we are really determined to see all beings free of suffering. Pretty good stuff. Is it easy to cultivate? It takes a while. But it can be done, and we always need to start where we are. So now you can see how, if instead of just sitting down to meditate, there's a whole different mental state I'm in already. Because I'm going to sit down with these enlightened beings. I'm going to invite them to my home. And I've created a special space for that. And I'm calling them to mind to rely upon them. And I'm cultivating bodhicitta. And I'm going to use this life to its highest potential for the benefit of all living beings. So really cultivating a virtuous mental state just to be ready. And we're just barely beginning. So I've set up the altar, I've done that. And so you may have noticed I said, by practicing generosity and the other far-reaching attitudes, that really refers to 6 perfections, which we'll unpack in the Lamrim. So it's really about this path that I'm going to become enlightened for the benefit of all beings. And then step 4 then is, now we're going to really invite all the enlightened beings. They call it call to mind the merit field or the refuge field. Depending on, any way we use that. So the idea is then that I'm sitting, I've taken refuge, and we'll say it 3 times. And I've cultivated my bodhicitta, my great compassion for all living beings, and I'm going to do this practice and live my life for the benefit of all beings. And then I'm going to call to mind all the enlightened beings. And usually talk about, so within Vajrayana Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, we tend to have gurus. There are gurus, and we see them as enlightened beings, and so they would go at the center, and they transform into a Buddha. If we're not on that path, we call to mind the Buddha. And then we call to mind all of our teachers, and then we call to mind all the other enlightened beings, whether bodhisattvas and arhats, dharma protectors and dakinis and all that, and all the wisdom and compassion lineages. The actual description of a merit field or a refuge field is really elaborate. And there are people who can and bring it all to life. And but for our purpose, being practical, it's nice to just bring a vision of the Buddha who's sitting there with you, and that he's really happy you're there. You know, I like to do a little, and that he represents all the enlightened beings. So I'm sitting down and calling to mind the Buddha represents all the enlightened beings. That he's there with a slight smile on his face. He's so happy that we're here working for the benefit of others. And you can feel his complete love and acceptance and his presence there. And he's representing all this. It's really nice to call that to mind. So then once he's there and he's representing all the others, then the technical label on it is we cultivate merit and purify. Purify and cultivate merit either way. So there's a 7-limb prayer that we do, a little practice. And now everything I'm telling you could be unpacked at much greater length and with refined detail. But I'm going to just give you a flavor of it. And then if you were to do it, you'd actually be able to do it fairly quick. It doesn't take long. The next step here is where I do the 7-limb practice, where I'm purifying my karmic or harmful karmic imprints, and I'm cultivating merit. So To understand this, we want to understand that this path is about two things, really. Two things. And I like to keep things simple. I'm here to cultivate virtue and merit, good karma, however you want to label it. I want my actions to come from good karma. So I want my actions to come from right intention, which is going to be about goodwill, harmlessness, renunciation. I'm going to want my actions to be ethical and healthy and well. That's the foundation of all spiritual growth. I want to cultivate that. I want to stop doing things that create harmful things, right? So I want to cultivate merit. I want to stop doing the things that cause harm. And if I cultivate merit, my experience of the world changes. Because, as with the water, how I'm experiencing it is through the lens of my karma. I change my karma, my experience of this changes. It really is an inside job. Yeah, which is so much easier than changing everybody else. Man, I've been trying, but you guys just won't straighten up. Man, if you just do a few more things, I could be happy. Yeah, but it's not so easy to change ourselves either. And so my teacher would always say, you stop doing the harmful stuff, do the good stuff. And then purify the stuff that we've already done that's harmful. And there's purification practice. And that just should be every day. Now, most of the time, we're not mindful enough to know, I'm doing harmful things, doing good things, just because, we're on autopilot. And we're getting upset, we're getting angry, we're getting worried, we're getting frustrated, we're doing stuff. And we're not being very mindful of what my motivation is and how I'm interacting with another human being. So, with this practice, then, as we call them all to mind, we really want to take a little time, and this will accumulate merit and purify some of the harmful karmic imprints that we have. And so, with the field of all these enlightened Buddhas, we go through and we do some activities that cultivate merit. Number one is prostration. So you'll see that prostration stuff. If you've ever seen people, they'll go ahead and they'll do this, and they go down their knees and they'll prostrate. Different traditions have different ways of doing it. Within the Tibetan tradition, we typically, when we put our hands together, we put our thumbs there as if we're holding a precious jewel. So it's a little different than that. It's this. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of nice, though. And when we go to prostrate, we're prostrating. We're start above our head, really, with the thought of obtaining enlightenment. We're prostrating with our body, our speech, and our mind. And then go down and touch our head to the floor in a 5-point posture. Fingers together, not loosey-goosey. Fingers together. You want to be mindful of what you're doing here. It's not lackadaisical. And what you're really doing is, if you have these enlightened beings here, these precious guests, you're prostrating with your body, speech, and mind, calling to mind all their wonderful qualities, the incredible efforts they do for all living beings constantly. It's really calling that to mind. So I'm prostrating with my body, speech, and mind, really calling to mind all those qualities. And we forget how much other people do. And we may not have any idea how much other people do. Tenzin Palmo, Western nun, 13 years in a cave. That's a lot of work. And to get ready to do almost 13 years in a cave, that took some work. Traveling to India, finding a teacher, taking ordination vows, learning Tibetan, learning to be in a place that was all men, and then studying with yogis, preparing things, going to find a cave, going to the Himalayas, spending 13 years there. And then has devoted her whole life outside of that to helping others and developing nunneries and helping nuns and providing education resources. There's all these people like that work hard. And so when I'm prostrating, I'm thinking about, just imagine all the Buddhas, all the efforts they've done for all of us. So cultivating that, really that virtuous mind. And then, so that's limb number 1, making prostrations. 2 is making offerings. Again, the offerings here, now these are the ones that we've done on the altar, but they can be mentally transformed, actually and mentally transformed. And this is one of my teachers. You know, you can use your mind. The mind's endless. You can offer whatever, and you can offer endless amounts of it. And the more the merit. You know, the more beings you have there, the more merit you can do, and see them receiving this, see them happy to receive this. This whole process is about getting my mind into a state of generosity. It's about getting my mind in a state of really calling to mind the wonderful efforts of others and these enlightened beings. And so I'm making these offerings. And the merit, he used to say, yeah, your mind you can visualize. So instead of 2, make it, 20 million. Every atom in your body could be prostrating. When you prostrate, every atom could be you prostrating. You could have endless yous. You can have all living beings prostrating. And the more that you can visualize, the more merit you get. I mean, it's almost sounds like cheating, doesn't it? But you actually have to be present to think about that. So it's all in the mind. So we make these offerings. So actually mentally transform these offerings. And then the third one is, so actually, confess my sins is number 3, confession. Sure hope so. Yeah. And then, that's number 3 is confession. So confession is where we have an opportunity to purify. And for a time we won't have a whole thing to go to that. But in this piece, and we will actually have, as we go through this whole purification process, we call to mind all the harmful activities that we've done in our lifetimes. And we develop a regret for it and a resolve. And it's a confession. It's kind of like going to confession. But in this time, we're actually seeing in our own mind how it harmed myself and others. It's an intelligent regret. It's not I'm a bad person. It's like, man, was that stupid. It just hurt me. It hurt others. It's just not the person I want to be. It's not how I want to show up. And you can purify the imprints there using 4 opponent powers. And then the 4th limb here is rejoicing in the virtues of others. Rejoicing in the virtues of others. Calling to mind all those, whether they're enlightened beings, whether they're wonderful teachers, whether they're your neighbor who's taken out the garbage or shoveled your drive, or, these single working parents, people are doing good stuff. Now we rejoice in that. So the first 2 are accumulating merit. The third one is the purification. 4th, rejoicing in the virtues of others, holy and ordinary beings. And 5 and 6 are requests. Requests that all these enlightened beings remain and teach the Dharma for others. That we're really creating a condition for this to flourish here, so everyone can be purified and cleansed and enlightened. Yeah. So we need the Dharma here. So we need to create the conditions for Dharma to be here. If we want the Dharma to be here, we have to create conditions for it. We have to be good students. We have to show up. We have to create by our activities that we want this here. And so this mind of making this request. And then 7 is the dedication. Dedicating all the merit we just accumulated for the benefit of all living beings. So instead of it being my little good karma that evaporates, it goes in the ocean of merit for all living beings. And in that way, it never goes away. It's like a bank account. It just stays there. So we're creating this whole environment for all living beings. We should just say all beings. That's probably more accurate. And then the last, so that takes us through the 5 preparatory, and the 6th one is requesting. Requesting inspiration and offering a mandala, usually. So now, if we step back for a minute, you could see how if I did all of that before I sat and meditated, imagine where our mental state would be. So now when I go to meditate, I have a motivation and a purpose for it because I know why I'm meditating. I know what the point of the meditation is going to be. And I've created this environment that I'm doing this, for the benefit of this human life that I have and all living beings. And I've really created a wonderful, conducive environment to have my practice flourish. So now I get a big old shovel instead of a little spoon. If I just go to meditate, sit down, it's still good. But this is like karmic weight is based mostly on our motive, our intention. And so we've got our motive and intention for all sentient beings, but now we've really taken our mind to a whole different level of being before we've even meditated. Really making it conducive. This is important. And so that's the 6 preparatory practices. I will, by next week I'll have some little additional resources for you, including an image of the merit field that we can probably email you or something, get those up. But I'm going to pause right there because we're coming up and just see if anyone had any questions. Because I threw a lot at you. I know you nailed it. Right? 6 preparatory practices, 7 limbs, to purify and accumulate merit. And, right? Easy peasy, right? Yeah. Yes?
Just one question. Sure. Where do you recommend someone starts, like with this is all completely new? Like,
right.
What book? Does it matter which book? Like, It's kind of a lot.
Right, right. And so I'm going to keep bringing us to being really practical. So let's just back up for a second, then I'll recommend a book. Now, if you haven't memorized everything I just said, and you don't have an altar and you don't have the offerings, when you go to sit to meditate, take a few moments to remember why you're there and set a good intention, right? That I'm here to do this for a reason. And then meditate. Make the space a little clean, right? Now, all this other stuff we learn as we go. And the book that I was going to suggest for this course that we're going through, I'm drawing from multiple resources. I am drawing from the Lamrim Chenmo, which is a 3-volume text. And I'm drawing from the commentary on that, which is a 5-volume. Yeah, I don't even think they got the last couple. I only have the first 3 volumes of that. And it's based on a 1-volume, The Lamp of the Path. But there's a book called Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, which really captures the essence of all this. Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. And it's one book. And in it, it's going to explain the merit field. It'll explain the things to think about. And it'll have these references. It was an incredible 24-day teaching done by Pabonka Rinpoche. Really famous teaching where he just drew all of this and he put it together. And he gave this famous teaching that Trijung Rinpoche, the tutor to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, was there and wrote all the notes for every day. And later, edited over many years and compiled it. And then that got translated into English. And it's called Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. I think that's a good text for what we're learning here. And then, and then we could talk about just a basic text to kind of make sense of this. But normally we will also have a lot more just what we meditate on, why we meditate. It's a little techie today. We'll be a little technical. And we'll get a little more technical because this is the path. And so the way this is designed is now that we know how to create the environment for the meditations, it's going to say, well, what to meditate on. Right? What to meditate on and what to reflect on. And the Lamrim is full of what we call analytical meditations. I like to think of them as contemplative, but analytical. So we're going to think about stuff. I mean, you're going to learn to meditate and think about stuff. Like anything I said today, we could think about that, and take some time in that in our practice. And the shift that we have to get is that mind of ours, which is that big glacier of snow coming at us. If I want to really make a dent in that, I need to intentionally start bringing my mind to things that are more realistic, healthier, more true in that sense, more virtuous ultimately too. So, but we don't normally think. We normally think about Dharma and that kind of stuff when something happens, right? Yeah. But yes.
Who are the enlightened beings we're inviting?
All the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and Arhats and so forth. So all living beings that have already become enlightened.
So they're living and dead?
Well, they're not technically dead ever, sort of. But, they're enlightened. So they're beyond our whole conditioned existence of heaven, hell, and all that. And it is said that Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they can emanate in human form. They can emanate in the form of a tree or a bridge or anything for the benefit of others and all that. And that there's much more than just this world that we experience. And so these enlightened beings are always available. The thing is, they can't enlighten you. And, ultimately we have to do the work. And that's something that, is really important to remember. We can call on them, we can have inspiration, but even to connect with them on certain levels, we have to create the karma for that. We have to be, one teacher who said, you could have a Buddha right here in this room and not know it, look real human to you because we're not clear enough to see because we have our karma. Kind of like the water again. So as we create better karma in our life, we see things more clearly. As we cultivate wisdom, we see things more clearly. For simple starting point, simplicity state, just thinking of the Buddha as an enlightened being and knowing that he represents all others that have gone before him and been around. Yeah. You're welcome. Any other questions there? Yes, Aaron.
So when taking that the natural law of karma exists and we will all be reborn again, does a bodhicitta motivation, does that lead you into a certain type of rebirth?
Right. So bodhicitta, when we're if that is infused in everything that we do, if we can really cultivate that, it can really transform us on a path that continues to grow to enlightenment. So if we're, we're going to be going through some of these key points, but if we enter a bodhisattva path, that path can continually improve us towards our next rebirth and so forth, continuing on a path to enlightenment, as opposed to this body dies and now I'm running around like a dog and I've lost everything that I've accumulated. In that sense, you don't really lose everything, but you lose much of it. But with the bodhisattva or the bodhicitta sort of motivation, it infuses our mind stream so that we can, if we continue to reinforce that, be something where we actually achieve bodhicitta. Yeah, then that's that they say you can be enlightened in this lifetime. It's that powerful. It takes something that normally takes eons into one lifetime. Yeah. So, but we always begin where we are, and that's the other thing. I want to love all living beings, and that's our goal, and we want to have compassion for all living beings. But we're still going to find we're human, and you might get frustrated and think that Aunt Lucy needs to buck up, And so, You just, and when you do, you need to remember you're still where you are. And now I want to go apologize to Aunt Lucy and work on it, and work on it. We need to start where we are. This teaching is going to go into 3 types of people, and it's going to cover the 3 types of practices for, do you want just a good next rebirth? Do you want to attain nirvana, or do you want to attain full Buddhahood? So 3 different types, and teachings for both. So it's really a comprehensive piece. So they do say if you want to, at least, at bare minimum, have a human rebirth next lifetime, the chief determinant karmic around that is pure ethics. Pure ethics of body, speech, and mind. And that'll at least get you next human life. I know, we're done, huh? Man. That's where purification helps. Purification. So the 4 opponent powers. So that's what they say for at least another human life is really good ethics. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, no sexual misconduct, and don't, what's that? So killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, that's the body. Lying, harmful speech, divisive speech, and this sort of gossip, that's with the speech. So we have body, speech. Mind is ill will, and I really hope they get theirs. I hope they suffer. Not a good one. Covetousness, covetousness, and sort of jealousy that arises out of that. And then what they call wrong view. And that wrong view is that my actions don't matter. They do matter. Everything we think they do matters. There's an imprint going on. And but also, to put into perspective that all of our steps can be steps forward, and just by virtue of being in this room today, you have what we call the rare and precious human rebirth. You have all the potential to become fully enlightened. Very few humans out of 7 billion have that, and you do. So, and you've come a long way to be where you are. And that's the thing, we don't want to waste it. We don't want to waste it. We have this opportunity. And so those are the things we call to mind before we do our practice. So, as we've set this and we've done our preparatory, then we're going to call to mind what a rare and precious life we have. We're going to call to mind. This day is not going to come again. We're going to call this to mind. Because we need to keep bringing that to our awareness. Because our mind absorbs wherever we're at. So, whether I'm at a bar or a nightclub or the movies or hanging out with so-and-so or whatever I'm doing, and where I spend my time at home watching TV for hours or whatever it is, that's the pathways. And we don't spend a whole lot of time here. And so, that's why when we do spend time here, let's get a shovel. And let's get a shovel. And so, if you want to start, if you're new and just want to start a meditation practice, even if it's 10 minutes, just to breathe and relax, what you're doing is you're training your mind to go where you'd like it for a change. And that's really healthy. And if you can think that I'm doing this so I could really make good use of my life, that's a good motivation. And then all this other more elaborate stuff can come later. Yeah. But liberation in the palm of your hand, good text. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to do a little dedication, yes? Yep, that's what I was just about to say. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so I was going to say on Saturday we are having a meditation day-long retreat here. So anyone that wants to learn there's 3 specific practices that we'll cover in there in shamatha practice on really how to have attentional balance. So it's from like 9 to 4 here Saturday. Shannon, who just left the room, was the person I was going to say to sign up with, but she's normally sitting right there. Or Laura back there will do that. But so we'll be here from 9 to 4, and it's donation based. So don't ever let money be a problem. If you want to come learn to meditate, come learn to meditate Saturday. But sign up ahead of time so we know. That helps space and all that. And there was something else I was going to announce. There was that.
Juanita Hot Springs.
Juanita Hot Springs. That's a good announcement. Yeah. There's some flyers back there with events and things. Oh, but in Juanita Hot Springs is like a retreat we go to, and that is the hot springs. Because all retreats should have hot springs. Hey, it's there. We're there. You might as well incorporate it. I'm just saying. So yeah, there's flyers with those activities. I remember what it was. We have some prayer flags back there, and so I just got a shipment from India of prayer flags and wall hanging. So if anyone's interested in those, that helps fund our center too, and your donations do as well. So thank you for that. And but Juanita Hot Springs was a nice touch. Yeah. Registration's open. Okay, so let's do a little dedication. All of you out there online too, thank you so much for showing up today. All right, so we're going to dedicate the merit and wisdom we've accumulated here today for all beings. Let us dedicate the virtue and wisdom we've accumulated both here today and throughout our lives, both individually and collectively. We'll dedicate it for the benefit of all beings. May all beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness. And may we be able to use both the merit and virtue we've accumulated here today and throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to cultivate the wisdom of enlightenment, to become truly enlightened as full Buddhas for the benefit of all beings. All right, thank you all so much. So good to see you, and as usual, stay out of trouble. And